Marvellous afternoon, everyone. There should be an S on the end of that. It's Rob Beckers. I'm just wondering why there's a trap door here. Why have you put that in during lunch?
Yeah, I just even clear. Play your own game.
So a few months ago, I was contacted to ask if we could send someone that was passionate, professional, knew what they were talking about. Unfortunately, they weren't available today, so you've got me. I'm here from the Metropolitan Police to talk about our commercial vehicle unit. More importantly, what happens when the worst happens? You're all going to have contingency plans within your business. That might be fire, flood, break-ins, all sorts of things. Have you got a contingency plan for when it really, really hits the fan? You'll have collision reporting, but do you know what you are doing when it comes to a serious or fatal collision? And the reality of that is probably that you've got something lacking there. So, everything I'm about to talk about, it's not an actual event, it's sort of cobbled together from various things. But imagine it's Tuesday morning, 6:15, and the 999 call comes in. Quickly, I need help. I think I've killed someone. I'm a lorry driver and I've hit a cyclist. Just didn't see him and run over him. Still under my lorry and he's not moving. I think he's dead. I'm going to prison for this, aren't I? And that is the reality of what that 999 call can sound like when it first comes in, because the person that's making the call, that driver, is in a state of shock. They're in a state of panic and a state of trauma. So very quickly, within seconds, in fact, what that triggers is a multi-agency response from all of the emergency services. The police will turn up and we will take the lead because there may be a criminal investigation. If we are looking at a death and we cannot ascertain what the cause of death is, and certainly if it's an unnatural death, which road death is, it will be treated as suspicious until ruled otherwise. So although we take the lead, we will not get in the way of the other emergency services. We will assist them because our main priority is saving life, if we can. And then from there, it's onto securing evidence, identifying people who are at the scene and establishing how they are and what involvement they have in the incident. Believe it or not, people will stand around with their mobile phones filming to put it on social media. Shock, horror, but it does happen. We're looking to secure those witnesses at an early stage, secure our drivers at an early stage so that we know who they are and we can deal with them. And one that's really important, notifying the next of kin for the person that is involved and is injured. The thing that I don't want is I don't want them finding out via social media. So I need to identify that person as quickly as I can, find out where they live, who their relatives are, get round to their address, or at least send a colleague to get round to their address as quickly as possible to deal with that notification. So as the incident moves on, the commercial vehicle unit turn up and we're presenting with Steve, who's a 45-year-old chap who is the driver of a heavy goods vehicle involved. He's quite shocked, he's tearful, but he's got no physical injuries. We've identified that the vehicle is operated by a company, We Haul. Steve has spoken to his transport manager on the phone. He's told him what's happened, but his transport manager hasn't really grasped the reality of this incident at this stage and has said that he's not going to be attending at that time. So the police introduce themselves, first of all to Steve, explaining their role, and then we will send him straight off for a medical assessment. Okay, shock is an injury, so he will be assessed by an ambulance crew. Regardless of whether he wants to or not, we'll direct him into the back of the ambulance, go and be checked over. And that is 5 or 10 minutes that driver can be sitting, gathering their thoughts, getting their head in the space for what is coming next. So while Steve is having that medical assessment, I will be on the phone to the company, and this is where it's really important. Make sure Vol is up to date, please, with current email addresses, current telephone numbers, because that is my go-to to get the contact details. And I'll put that phone call in and I will ask that transport manager to attend the scene or at least send a representative. As this incident unfolds, we get the very sad news that the cyclist has passed away. And that is something that we have to tell Steve at a very early stage of the investigation as well. So I talked about the transport manager or a company representative. Why do I want them there? Okay, you've all got offices like that, haven't you? All nicely, nice offices, yeah. So I want that person to come to the scene primarily to support that driver. If I'm in full uniform at a scene, I will do my very best to calm that driver down, reassure them, help them through the process. But I can't take away the fact that I'm in full uniform and that driver has never met me before, may have had bad experiences with the police in the past, so might be a little bit guarded around me. I want someone that driver is going to be comfortable with. So from a company point of view, whilst that person is coming to the scene, we need somebody on the telephone getting into the insurance company straight away to trigger legal support. We're not talking about first notification of loss, that our vehicle's been involved in a collision. We need that legal support organised for your driver at the scene as quickly as possible. And I will talk more about that in a little while. Purpose of that person coming to the scene, I've got a lot of questions. What camera systems do you have on your vehicles? How do they function? Do they overwrite? How do I get access to them? What telematics systems have you got? How do I access all of that data? It's not things that I want to be asking a driver because their mind is elsewhere at that stage and they may not even know what the answer to those questions are. It's highly likely, if it's a fatal collision, that vehicle will be coming away with the police for examination. So if you've got a load on that vehicle, if we can release that load to you, you can still get that delivered. So again, by having someone at the scene, we can organise all that transshipping of the load so that you can carry on and at least get your clients their goods. I'm also really keen to know what welfare support you've got in place, not just for the driver first and foremost, but also the driver's family, okay, because the driver's family are the ones that are picking up the pieces when that driver gets home later in the day. But also think about driver's colleagues. Okay, these are not people that just come into the office and don't form friendships. They form friendships with people in work, and their colleagues are also going to be feeling quite put out and quite shocked by what's happened. I will have the conversation about how that driver is getting home with you. Are you going to take them home? Or are the police going to take them home? What I don't want is I don't want the scenario where we all finish up at the scene and that driver is stood around not knowing how they're getting home. It has happened in the past. It's not something that I'm very impressed with, but we will always, from a policing perspective, if we can't be sure that you will get the driver home, we will do that. Okay, yeah, we've already talked about support for the company employees. Something that's often overlooked is those office staff, people in the transport office. They're just equally as affected, so make sure you've got that support in place for them. So at this stage, facts around this collision. We know that a collision's occurred. We know that a cyclist is involved. We know that a HGV is involved. We know that Steve is the driver and the cyclist is dead. Going back to that initial 999 call, Steve said he's run over a cyclist and killed him, having not seen him. So, quick show of hands, who's going to consider arresting Steve on suspicion of causing death by dangerous or careless driving at the moment? Quick show of hands. One, two, yeah, fair, yeah, a reasonable number. Shame on you. Shame on you. Right, let's talk about the reality. Is Steve a witness or is he a suspect? Well, let me be perfectly honest. I'll go back to where I was at the beginning of this. It's an unexplained death. It's an unnatural death. So it's treated as suspicious. As Steve plays a significant part in that as a driver, it's fair to say that he's probably going to be treated as a suspect initially. So, something that we've heard from industry. I've heard that the police will always arrest the HGV driver if someone's killed or seriously injured. Again, quick show of hands, do you believe that? Not really. Okay, it's a myth. We're governed by the Police and Criminal Evidence Act, codes of practice. So at this stage, no offences have actually been alleged against Steve. No one has said he's been driving in a dangerous manner or anything like that. So we've got no clear evidence of offences at this stage. So Steve is likely to be a significant witness because he provides key evidence about what has happened. But we do still need to ask some further questions about his involvement in the collision. So again, one of the things that we've heard out there in the industry, you'll be interviewed without a solicitor at the scene. Well, of course we're going to do that, and we don't want solicitors involved. They're going to tell them, we'll just get the goodies. And no, it's a myth. Okay, codes of practice say that we have to give people certain information if we are going to interview them about offences or alleged offences. So an interview will be conducted under caution, and that affords suitable legal protection as well as allowing the interview that we conduct to be admissible at a later stage if needed. So you do not have to say anything, but it may harm your defence if you do not mention, when questioned, something which you later rely on in court. Anything you do say may be given in evidence. Well, that sounds like you've been arrested, doesn't it? Okay, because that's what you hear when people are arrested. The caution is exactly the same, whether you're arrested or not. It is just simply saying you don't have to tell me anything, but if you don't, when I ask you a question and you later rely on it in court, then, the court will make their own mind up as to whether you're telling the truth, but you don't have to say anything. The other thing they will be told, if they are not under arrest, you'll be told you're not under arrest. You are free to leave. You are entitled to legal advice. And if need be, the police can arrange free and independent legal advice for you. So we will tell the driver all of those things at the scene. And then we will ask some questions. Okay, but before we get to the question stage, let's talk about solicitors for a moment. If you've got a nominated solicitor, you can speak to them, which is good. If you haven't, but you want legal advice, I will call a duty solicitor for you from the roadside. Duty solicitors, robbery, theft, bit of sexual offending, criminal damage. Let's not talk about what they do in their spare time, but they're very good at doing those sort of things at police stations. They will come to the scene, or they will speak to you on the telephone. They will give you some advice, which is great. But if I was to ask a duty solicitor, do you know what an operator's licence and a tachograph is, they'll probably look at me quite blankly. So do you think that's the most appropriate person to be representing your driver, and ultimately your driver is representing your company and can drop you in it very, very quickly by saying the wrong thing? I don't think so. So always my advice would be, yes, have a solicitor, but make sure it is a suitable, qualified transport solicitor. What questions are we going to ask, and what do you need to legally answer? Section 170, the Road Traffic Act 1988, mandates that you must ask certain questions. And this is not an interview, this is questions that you must answer at the scene of a collision. And they are your name, your date of birth, your home address, what vehicle you're driving at the time of the collision, and if you don't own that vehicle, who owns the vehicle. That is all that you are legally mandated to answer at the roadside in the event of a collision. We don't ask for a driver's account of collision. Let me give you a little bit of reality. The new shiny probationer that's just started their career in the police service turns up, they get thrown a book and told, fill that in, and they get to the driver section. They'll caution them, they'll ask their name, date of birth, address, vehicle details, and then they'll say, just tell me quickly what happened. And at that point, we're going to answer that question, aren't we? We're going to give them a brief account of what happened, because we're all decent human beings, okay? We want to be helpful. That's possibly the worst possible thing your driver can do, okay? If they give an account at that point, it's not going to be accurate. Okay, so our driver, we know he's in a in a state of shock. He was tearful. He was upset. We've sent him to the back of the ambulance, haven't we, to be checked over. So when we are subject to trauma, we've got a tiny, tiny little part of our brain, and it is tiny, especially in my tiny little brain, called the amygdala, and it's a processing centre for our emotions. When we are subject to trauma, we get a sudden dump of chemicals run through our body. It increases our heart rate, increases our breathing, makes you go all tingly all the way through your body. It's that fight and flight sort of situation, and it goes back thousands of years when we was hunting for food, or we were the person being hunted for someone else's food. Okay, and it puts our brain into the same state of fight or flight, so it will distort our perception. And if you provide an account whilst your brain is in that state, it is unlikely to be accurate. Not because you want to be unhelpful or because you're lying, but because you're trying to fill in the blanks because you don't actually understand. So, no account, please, at this point. Now, what should happen is after a period of decompression, okay, and that is time that you go away, typically 72, 96 hours at least, a driver will be invited to attend a voluntary interview at a police station. The interview is voluntary, but it will be conducted under caution. Driver will be told they're not under arrest, free to leave, and they will have the same right to legal representation. Again, we can organise a duty solicitor for you if you want one, but knowing what I've told you already, do you want a duty solicitor representing you? Probably not. And this is where that early legal advice really comes into play. Get the right solicitor representing your driver at an early stage, and they will provide the best possible advice. From my perspective, it also assists me because it's someone that knows the process, knows what the sort of questions are that are going to be coming along. So I don't normally give legal advice, but if I do give legal advice, it's very limited. Always attend a voluntary interview under caution with a solicitor. Always. If I was going for an interview at the police station, I would have a solicitor with me. We don't make any judgment if you turn up with a solicitor. We don't assume that you are guilty because you've turned up with a solicitor. You've got something to hide. Not the case. In fact, I would say that you're very switched on if you do that. So let's go back to the roadside for a moment. Road traffic samples, and we will require certain road traffic samples. And it doesn't matter what vehicle you're driving. It could be an HGV, it could be one of those. And by the way, that's not my driving, okay? If it was me, that'd be upside down, it'd be on fire and all sorts. So we will subject you to a breath test at the roadside. We will ask you to do a roadside drug test, which will test for cannabis and cocaine. And the other thing we will do is called a field impairment test. We will get you walking up and down in a line, counting up to 30, standing on one leg, tipping your head back, touching your nose, all those sort of things. It's designed so that we can see if there's any other things that are affecting you. Prescription medication maybe. Things like antihistamine can affect your responses, can affect you when you're driving. Now, we all do this at the roadside. And the idea behind that is we don't want to catch people out. We want to discount it. We want to be in a position to say your driver was not under the influence of drink, drugs, or any other substance rather, that affected their driving. If you've got policies in place as a company that say we will drug and alcohol test a driver after a collision, don't use the police as your method of doing that. Still conduct it, because if you should later go down a route of discipline with that driver and you've not followed your procedures, it might leave you in a sticky place with employment law. Okay, so that's one of our vans there. As you can see, it's got really dark windows on the back, one-way windows on the side. And the idea behind that is that we can get that driver out of public view as quickly as possible. Okay, we don't bundle them in the back and give them a good kick in until they confess. We are not allowed to do that anymore. Taking all the fun out of this job. The idea is it's a little bit of privacy, it's a little bit of dignity for that driver away from those citizen journalists or whatever you may like to call them that are walking around with cameras trying to film. There's no recording facilities in there, so you can have those private conversations with your company, with your legal advisors. It does say hot drink, and it's got a picture of coffee. It's doubtful whether it is actually coffee, but it's something that's warm and brown that we will give your driver to drink. If they're hungry, if they need to eat food because they've got certain medical conditions, for goodness sakes, tell us at an early stage, because I'll quite happily send someone away with my credit card to buy them some lunch. It won't be anything from the Ritz. It'll be a meal deal. But, you know, we will look after that driver. We will make sure they are as comfortable as possible. Why do we want them out of public view? Well, let's have a quick look at this video clip. Okay, there's no sound playing on this, unfortunately. So I'll just talk you through this. This is filmed from the near side of a van, and as he goes past, he makes that comment that you hear all so often: you can't park that there, mate. And, you know, most people think, yeah, it's just a bit of fun. It's just a bit of a laugh. And then he finished up by saying, that's a bad one, isn't it? Because that Morrison's lorry is on its side. Still posts it online though, doesn't he? Completely unaware of what's underneath that Morrison's lorry. Is there anyone underneath that lorry dead? Is there a family of 5 in a car underneath it? But someone has posted that online, and that's what we're trying to prevent. Right towards the end of that video clip, the driver is in clear view talking to a couple of police officers. We don't want that driver being on a worldwide stage at an early stage of the investigation when we can get them out of view. When we've done all of our bits and pieces, and we will do everything we need to do with the driver as quickly as possible, we will aim to release them from the scene at an early stage. Okay, to get them back to their house, okay, and they've all got houses like that because you're paying far too much money, don't you? Okay. So at the earliest opportunity, we're going to get them home. But I want to know, how are they getting home? Who is going to be taking them there? Who is going to be there when they arrive? Because they are still going to be in a state of shock and trauma. I need to know that they are well looked after. It may well be that home is not the best place for them if they've got somebody else they can stay with, rather than going back to an empty house. And I'm going to be seeking some reassurances from you as a company representative that their welfare is being looked after. What have you got in place to support this person over the forthcoming days? Have you got employee assistance schemes? And also, have you got early support from suitable legal professionals? By the stage you get 3 or 4 days in to a fatal collision, a lot has happened at that point, okay? It needs to be almost instant. As soon as you get that phone call in the office to say something has happened, you need that legal professional, and it's got to be the correct legal professional. 4 days later, that legal professional has to do a lot of unpicking of things that may have been said or done. What we won't do is just simply drop the driver at the local train station and say, off you go, mate. You can make your own way home now, okay? Because that driver is still going to be in a terrible state, and we need to make sure that they get home safely. And it doesn't matter, I'll quite happily pay my PCs over time to travel to the other end of the country if I need to, so that that driver gets home safe. Of course, if they've got a villa in Spain, I'll do it myself. I'll go out there and stay with them for a couple of weeks.
Brilliant.
Right, so we get back to a vehicle now, and vehicles will be seized, as will mobile phones, sat-navs, other devices that may hold relevant information. And you might think to yourself, what power do the police have? Well, there it is, Section 19 of the Police and Criminal Evidence Act gives me that power to seize the property. And Section 22 of the same Act gives me the power to retain those articles for as long as I need to as evidence. Now, with vehicles, it's quite difficult because you want your vehicle back as quickly as possible. Every moment that is not on the road turning a wheel is costing you money. It's costing you money not only for that vehicle, but also for the additional vehicle that you're probably having to hire in. And if you've got 500 lorries on your fleet, that might not be too much of a problem. It might be more of an inconvenience. But if you've only got 2 lorries on your fleet and you've lost one of them, that's a significant chunk of your income, isn't it? Now, I said we will keep hold of that as long as we need to. Various people must be given the opportunity to examine that vehicle. Okay, the police will examine it. The defence will also have the opportunity to examine it. And when I say defence, that means you, the operator, will have the opportunity to have it independently examined. The deceased's family also have the opportunity after those examinations, if they wish to get an independent examination done, they can do as well. And there's a legal ruling from 1994, RV Beckford. And what that's basically saying is that the vehicle should be retained for mechanical examination, especially if serious charges are to follow. And it should only be released when every single interested party is in agreement with that report. Now, the police examine your vehicle. The police say your vehicle is absolutely tip-top. There is nothing wrong with it. No one else wants to look at it. You can have your vehicle back. Are you going to take your vehicle back? There's probably a temptation, but don't. Whilst it's in the police possession, get your own independent examination done on it, because it might just be that something quite important has been missed by the police. Shock horror, okay? I don't sound like a copper, do I? Saying that we might get it wrong, but that's a reality. We might miss something. So whilst it's in police possession, get an independent examination done on it anyway, regardless. And that way, that empowers you. It also empowers your legal team. Now, later on down the line, there will be some form of court process. It may be limited to one court process. It could be several. In the event that there are charges, lowest level is going to be magistrates' court. That is for very low-level offences, or for some of those more serious offences, they will always start off in the magistrates' court and may be referred on for sentencing. And then we have the Crown Court, so that's some more serious offences. Causing death by careless driving, causing death by dangerous driving. That's where those cases would go. And they would be jury trials or for sentencing. We've also got, right towards the end of a lot of the process, the coronial side of things, coroner's court, highest court in the land, and they will investigate any deaths that are unnatural, violent, or where the cause is unknown. All fatal collisions will be subject to a coroner's process. And by the time we get to coroner's court, it can be 2.5 years down the line. The other court process, which is often overlooked, is the county court. When somebody dies, there will always be someone in the background probably that is saying that shouldn't have happened. Is there any negligence anywhere along the lines? Am I entitled to any form of compensation? So there could well be a county court process. Now, what I'm about to say sounds absolutely terrible, but I make no apologies for it. Someone dying is cheap. Sounds horrible, doesn't it? Okay, because we only die once. It's a one-time payout. But if someone is seriously injured, serious life-changing, lifelong injuries, that can be millions and millions of pounds. Okay, so again, that legal representation at an early stage is going to help you, and it's also going to help your insurers to try and limit their liability. So those are the court processes. What else might we have to face? We might have regulatory hearing. We might have public inquiry if the company are investigated and found to have been negligent in their running of the company. They may be referred for regulatory proceedings. The driver, indeed, if they've done something wrong, may well be subject of a driver conduct hearing. Right, internal cameras. This is probably one of the biggest things that you have in life that causes you grief, because internal cameras are great, okay, but your unions and your drivers will say it's an invasion of my privacy, okay, and you're not using it as a means of catching out your drivers, are you? What you're using it for is a means of defending your drivers. The main people that don't like internal cameras, in my view, it's generally people that are doing things that they shouldn't be doing when they're behind the wheel, whether that's smoking, texting, not wearing their seatbelt. Just to be quite clear, I don't really care about smoking when you're in a lorry. I know what the law says, but I've got much bigger things to fry than someone smoking in a cab. So, is it an invasion of privacy, or is that camera the key witness to everything that has unfolded? Video clip there. This is the near side of a Volvo FMX tipper, and you might just be able to see around about there a pedestrian. This was a fatal collision. So as the HGV moved off, the pedestrian stepped forward, placed his head under axle 3, killing himself. Was it a suicide, or was it a case that the driver had done no mirror checks, that person was already laying on the floor, there to be seen, and because he didn't do any mirror checks, moved off without seeing him? That was the driver of that lorry, a chap called Doral Benier. Really, really good driver, really nice guy. When we looked at the internal camera footage, what it showed was Doral was literally test standard driving in the lead up to that incident. He'd come to a set of traffic lights, stopped behind other vehicles, placed his handbrake on, and whilst he was sat there, he didn't pick up his paperwork or anything like that, looking at it. What he was doing was constantly looking around his cab, looking in the mirrors. He'd done 3 mirror checks before he even got to the stage of moving off. As he was about to move off, he'd done another set of mirror checks, as evidenced on the internal camera. And then he looked down to his right-hand side. As he moved off, he was looking straight ahead at the vehicles in front, and about a second to a second and a half later, looked in the near side to give a follow-through on that pedestrian, by which time everything had already happened. So from an investigative point of view, within 45 minutes, we had this footage. Literally 20 minutes after we arrived, had that footage, we was able to look at it and rule out any offences on the part of Doral. Now, that doesn't negate the need of us to do certain things, such as the impairment testing, drink and drugs. But that took a lot of time out of our investigation, and it actually showed that Doral was a model driver and had done everything he possibly could. There was nothing more he could have done to prevent that collision. So, driver wellbeing, I said I want you to focus on that as well when this happens. And I'm sure that you've all got employee assistance programs which are available for your staff. They may even extend to families and friends of your staff in some cases. One of the things that's been fed back to me by a lot of drivers, and I've spoken to tens of thousands over the last couple of years, is that employee assistance schemes are not necessarily trusted by drivers. They feel that it's a feed into a HR system, and if they disclose that they're struggling with something, it'll feed back to the transport team. They'll be taken off driving, may even lose their jobs as a result. So this explains a little bit of the reluctance to use employee assistance. We've teamed up with this charity called Shout, and what Shout offer is a text-based counselling service. Quite simply, you text the word Shout to 85258, and you get a bounce back text, which is on the side of the screen there, and they will then go into a text-based counselling service with you. So it doesn't matter where that driver is. As long as they can get a signal on their mobile phone, they can reach out for confidential help. And the thing that I love about this is, first of all, it's free. It's available 24/7, 365 days a year. Doesn't show on a phone bill. None of the network providers will show it on a phone bill. And if you do use that service, you can just delete the history of that text conversation quite easily, as you can with any text message. All the advice they give is professionally overseen by a clinical psychologist. So the advice that your driver is given is geared up to them. It is not one of these chatbots that is giving information back based on your responses. And Shout will never refer you to other agencies. The only time they will do something out of the box is if you indicate that you're going to harm yourself or somebody else. And at that point, they will contact the police and we will come and find that person to help them, not cart them off. We will help them. It's suitable for the industry. There's a lot of men in the room. Okay, there's a reason why men don't live as long, and that's because we're stupid. This is normally the point where women are all clapping and going, yeah, you are, you idiots. Okay, but we are stupid as blokes. We don't tend to talk about our feelings, do we? Whereas women are a little bit more open with their emotions and feelings. That's why they live longer, okay, because they deal with traumas and stresses in different ways. This is completely suitable for the industry because it's anonymous. You're not picking up a phone, physically having a conversation, imagining what the person on the other end of the phone looks like or what they're thinking about things. So please do take that number down. Please do share it amongst your drivers, all of your staff, in fact. It is absolutely brilliant. I don't know how I'm doing on time, but I'm the old Bill, so I'll do what I like anyway.
2 minutes.
2 minutes, Turkish. So at this point, you've all got collision policies and procedures in place. How do you deal with your blue light collisions versus non-blue light collisions? And what I mean by that is a damage-only collision where police don't attend, you might investigate it. You might need to think about a slightly different approach if police are in attendance because of something called legal privilege. And if you want to know a little bit more about that, ask the legal representatives in the room and they will tell you a lot more about why you need to be very guarded around what you do investigation-wise when the police attend. Because as much as I might appear to be a nice bloke, all right, and you're probably all going, no, you don't. If you do a collision investigation, I can come in, I can access that at any point in time and I can take that away and use it in evidence. So you need to make sure that you've dealt with that in the right way so that I cannot do that. And that is where legal privilege comes in. Please speak to Charlotte or Laura if you need any more advice on that, and they will be happy to assist you, and we'll discuss our commission rates later. Those are our contact details. Please do feel free to contact us with any questions you have via email. We've got an X account and we've also got an Instagram account, wherever that is. I don't do Instagram. But we are there to help you. We are there to support you. We're not there to balloon in, do a little bit of enforcement work and run away. Enforcement does not work generally. Education does. Okay, and this is where we are coming at it from the Met Police. If you need support with anything at all, do contact us. But I would urge you, at the end of the day, go away and look at what your policies are around your collisions, and in the event of that serious or fatal collision and that phone ringing tomorrow morning, know what you're going to do, know what buttons to press to make the right things happen at the right time. Thank you very much. You've been a fantastic audience, laughing in the right places. I appreciate it.
Just stay there, Rob, for a second. Right. I think it's worthwhile asking for a show of hands here, Rob, is that we asked about bridge strikes before, so I hope this guy's not going to stick his hand up to this question as well. How many of you have been involved in a fatal incident? Oh, quite a few. Oh, you put your hand up to all questions today, buddy. So how many of you dealt with your incident as you've just seen? 1, 2. So it shows how much that session in particular backs up what you need to do following this morning's sessions. When you think you've done everything right before you send everybody out on the road, what happens when, we said, the shit hits the fan at the side of the road? And I think there's a lot there to be taken away. So those two who've put their hands up saying they've done it exactly like that, fantastic, round of applause for you guys. And I think everybody else should look at those slides, Rob, and put it into a nice little training session or get you guys out to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm not going anywhere fast today, so I'll be around. If you want to come and speak to me, just look for the short bloke in fancy dress on, you know, and I'll give you any advice that you might need.
So while Rob's getting unmiked in that respect, some of the speakers will be staying around at the end. There is tea, coffee, cakes, refreshments at the end. So by all means, stay and have a chat with any of the speakers this afternoon. So that'll be great.